What's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to The Right Mindset. As always, this is the highlight series for new authors, and I'm joined today with Joseph Harkreader. Thanks, Joseph, for jumping on the show and
Oh,
giving me.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that's interesting about what you do as an author is you focus on anime stories. Is that accurate to say?
Yes, I write dark fantasy that is Arthurian and anime inspired.
Yeah, and I believe they are dark novels, right? Basically, what do you call them? My brain is going amiss here. You don't write straightforward novels; you write dark novels. So there's imagery, right? Is it like a comic book, but it's a?
Oh no, they're just novels.
Oh, they are straightforward novels
Yeah,
inspired by the anime
yeah.
storytelling.
So I guess as far as like anime inspired goes, when you think of anime, you think certain types of tropes within like building characters and like action.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
don't, and the aggressiveness, or like for example, the last Airbender, Bender, the way those story archetypes are there. You have the dark father figures, the fallen heroes that are really, they're villains, but then they have their nice arcs and turn to heroes.
yeah,
Uh and uh but there's also usually an element of elemental element. So this fire, the idea of fire, earth, wind, water, and stuff like that, usually in anime, right? Is
yeah,
that
yeah. I have a character that has water powers, for instance.
So it's the water powers, and also like demons are very much a part of
Yes,
the anime world, and I believe your book deals with demons, correct?
yes, deals with all types of stuff. I am like a mythology geek. I love doing research. So whenever I start a new project, I like to just like go and dive into different pantheons of gods, different spirits, demons. So yeah, like within Knights of Avalon, you'll find Norse mythology, Egyptian, African, Greek, lots of stuff.
And is that what made you decide, what, let me take what I like researching and what I enjoy reading and put it into a very specific form and write these books? Is that what drove you?
Yeah, I mean, since I was a kid, I've always loved anime and I've just always enjoyed and just kind of devoured media that was mythology driven. So I guess that's what inspired me.
Now, are you interested in writing other genres and styles of writing, or are you primarily focused on, let me get the, because I know you have two books out right now, correct?
Three.
Oh, three. Three. My bad. Uh, are you going to jump to other genres or novel writing styles?
I think I just like to explore different like aspects of fantasy, whether it's dark, it's urban, it's high. So I guess fantasy is sort of my first love. I like to read other things, but as far as writing, I just like the way that fantasy allows you to essentially do anything you want. And
Yeah, and the other part is it's writing anyway, so it doesn't. You can literally create. You're a god with words, and
yes,
that's the fun part about being a writer is we are not limited by what we know of in the world. We can create and design new things, and why does the world have to be like Earth? Why can't it be? They live on a lava planet, and they can live on
right, right.
lava. Lava hurts us, but why does it have to hurt anyone else, right? So
Very true.
you can
Yeah,
do
with the
anything.
Knights of Avalon, the characters start out in our world, and then it's a portal fantasy, so they go into Avalon.
Oh, it's a portal fantasy for anyone listening, especially non-writers or people who are interested in me writing. Portal fantasies are like Narnia. So basically, the lion, the witch, the lion, and the wardrobe, or whatever, right? Is that the first book? Uh,
Yeah, I believe
it
so.
just means they're sucked in. Alice in Wonderland is a portal fantasy.
Mhm.
Anything that takes you from our quote unquote reality to a new world is a portal fantasy. Now, for everyone who's been listening to the series, usually I start off with a nice question that is randomly chosen, and I'm gonna ask Joseph the question, one of which he picked earlier. So, there are two potential options when it comes to publishing: traditional publishing and self-publishing. They are both potentials for any author looking to make a career as a writer. If we consider both of those options as part of the publishing industry, what is it about the publishing industry that you love?
Well, I guess if you look at like traditional publishing versus self-publishing, I mean, each one has its pros and its cons. At one point, I did go for traditional publishing without completely understanding the process, and like many authors, received rejections. It was definitely an interesting journey, and then I actually have a little bit of a story, a horror
Go
story.
for it. Let's hear it.
And okay, so I queried. Like I said, most people do. You don't really understand the process, and you just kind of dive into a book, and you don't really understand just the different things that go into it, as far as like immersing yourself in a community. Having like alpha readers, beta readers, just bookish friends that can help you. I didn't have any of that, and I was sort of on my own, and so I wrote a book. But going into like writing, all I did was I wrote fan fiction, and I did like role playing type writing, and it was fun, and it really made me love writing, but it didn't prepare me to write an entire book. And I think that's why, aside from the fact that traditional publishing is just super hard to get, why I was getting these rejections. So skip to somebody I knew saying, "Hey, the price tag on traditional publishing, or excuse me, self-publishing is super high, but here's this company, and you can make payments to them, and they'll edit your book, they'll format your book, they'll give you a book cover."
Was this Lulu?
No, 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 no. Little did I know, it was a vanity publisher.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
The dark side of
yeah,
publishing.
so that's how I ended up with this.
Okay. You got a good cover though. Is that a model or someone drew that?
It's a model.
Oh, nice,
Here,
nice.
like the reflection. Yeah, I actually designed the cover, and I sent them to it. Sent them the idea, because they were like, "Here's like Shutterstock.
Yeah.
Send us your ideas." And I love graphic design, so I did this designed this myself, but they just kind of cleaned it up for me. But the formatting and the editing process was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. But so I got out of that. Here, let me air my humiliation. Look at this format. It's terrible. It's like giant. But yeah, so this was kind of a nightmare, but it taught me so much. And one of those lessons was that if you go into a situation where people are asking you as a publishing house for money, red flag.
Yeah,
Red
absolutely.
flag.
Same for agents, by the way. If anyone's listening and you don't understand how agents work, legally they're only allowed to take 10%, no more. And that's because, believe it or not, they are a work for hire company. So when you go to get your agency license, there are 3 boxes you could check. One is for employment, one is for models and actors and stuff like that. And there is another option, but it's unimportant to what artists we're discussing. And when a book agent or a literary agent takes you on, they're a work for hire. Their job is to help you find work and establish relationships and get you into the right doors. And they're allowed to get 10%. Managers, on the other hand, invest into you. They spend money to elevate you, and therefore they could ask for any from 10 to 20% without
Yeah.
blinking an eye.
Oh yeah, but the point is they invest. They say they see potential, and they invest in that potential. They're not like, "Hey, pay us this amount of money. We'll deliver you a mediocre product and just bounce."
Here's your
Yeah,
book. Bye.
that taught me a lot. But I went back and I studied craft, and I improved myself, and then that's how I came up with this. But anyway, so
Did you draw that cover, by the way? Did
oh
you make
no,
that cover or someone else did? Because that's really
so I
excellent.
had the art commissioned, and
Mhm.
then I just had my husband. He made the logo, and then
Excellent.
I put the formatting together.
Very cool. Yeah, when I saw that on your website, I was like, the cover art is
Yes,
definitely
it's great.
professional. Uh, excellent artist. Do you want to give them a shout out?
Oh
Whoever.
yeah, she is on Instagram. Her name is Odette A. Bach.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. Excellent work.
But yeah,
Excellent work.
but as far as the industry, just depending on like what you're capable of doing and what you're looking for, I think again pros and cons. Like self-publishing, obviously you have to pay more upfront yourself, whether it's the book cover, the formatting, the editor, and of course you're kind of completely on your own as far as marketing and different facets of like the process. But that's where it's important to immerse yourself in a bookish community and meet other people, because the support is invaluable. But as far as traditional publishing, I guess, pros and cons. You don't have as much creative control. You're going to have somebody sort of at the helm telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple friends who got deals, and they got feedback being like, okay, well, this person is interested in me writing X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
But at the same time, hey, you get money up front. You have people and expert advice telling you what to do and kind of guiding you. So, I mean, just depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, and anyone who's
Right.
listening, of course, money up front doesn't mean that you. Well, money up front is basically not money you just get. Like you actually have to pay that back through the sales of the books, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
like say if you get, well, they do it in payments now, I think, right?
Well, depending. So the advance is usually if you have a manuscript and it's fiction, they'll pay you a flat rate up front. If you're writing a nonfiction book, like I have a self-help book, just for like being in the industry of entertainment, what
Yeah.
they do is they pay you in increments. So you don't necessarily actually have to have a finished book when you write nonfiction. You just have to have an outline and a discussion of what it's going to be about. And if they like the idea, they pay you a small advance, and then every depending on the publisher you go through, when you reach milestones, they'll give you more money. And so but like someone like Brandon Sanderson's, they're also going to give you a flat. They're going to be like, "Oh, you have another book coming out. We'll give you a ridiculous advance because we know you're going to sell X amount of copies."
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, but as you were saying though, as far as having to kind of pay it back, it's like you get that advance and then you don't get anything until the book makes that money.
Yeah, and again, remember, contracts change for everyone, publishers change for everyone, but for the most part, usually you have to pay it back 100% before you see any money. That's why you hear a lot of bands get screwed because they release their first album and they don't make any money. Well, it's pretty much the same for authors.
Yeah.
First time authors don't normally uh, uh,
Right.
sell a million copies of a book. Unless they do their proper marketing, they have their publishers, they go out and do those interviews, and they really build their platform, which isn't just social media. Platform is just your brand name. So
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
yeah, I mean, I say these things for the audience when they hear certain things. I want them to learn while they listen.
Oh no, yeah, I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
Now, Joseph, as part of the question, since I'm assuming you self-published, as you stated,
Yeah.
what is it that you love about the self-publishing process that made you say, okay, this is definitely something I could get behind?
Well, as I mentioned, you have 100% creative control. That's amazing. I mean, I wouldn't really want somebody telling me how I should write my characters, what type of story I should write. Outside of obviously, if you hire a developmental editor, they're going to give you feedback, which is awesome. But yeah, I love the creative control. I like the fact that as a self-published author, the royalty is higher, so you get paid more money per sale. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely perks to being self-published.
Are you pro or con for pay for print for pay? So like, or pay for print, like Amazon. Like if you publish through Amazon, if I want your book, you get paid per print, or do you like to have the physical copies so you can sell them and get them into local stores and stuff like that?
Well, I have both actually. Like I have like a collection of copies on my bookshelf. And I think it's great to have ones that are print on demand as well. I mean, I don't really want to sort of close any doors and I guess leave anyone out that's a potential customer.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Now, as far as that goes, your career, you've been doing this for over 3 books. You have the 3 books out. Is this a career that you have structured to be more of a business in the sense that is your primary focus? Or are you still working, jobs on the side? Or are you working within your field of interest, which would be writing? How does your career basically influence your life, and how have you molded your career to benefit your life?
Right on, that's a good question. I mean, I think obviously, sorry, it's different for everyone, but for me, like right now, like just like my weekdays, I'm able to write full time. My husband, he owns a dental lab, so that's kind of a bonus
Nice.
that I have somebody helping. But also, we also have different kind of ventures that we've undertaken, whether it's a graphic design business, we've done custom invitations. We had or still have like a drink business where we sell these drinks called jarritos that are delicious.
Hmm.
On occasion, I'll run Instacart on weekends. So, just whatever we can do as like kind of side hustles to make money around his lab and around my writing is kind of my life.
Absolutely, and just for anyone who's listening, what Joseph is really doing, which is an amazing path that I recommend others do, is he's creating passive income and other businesses. And a lot of times, like even when I started in the music industry, my mentor said, there's no money in music, which is true. It's a business. It's not. It has nothing to do with music. Music is just the creative outlet, but that isn't. You don't make money on books and music. You make money on doing your job, running your business. And by having those passive income outlets and creating secondary and tertiary businesses, you're allowing yourself the freedom, the reward to do the thing you passionately do. And like Joseph said, he created these income outlets that allow him to focus on the books and kind of give the kind of detail and dedication that he wants to his career. And that's the big difference, I think, between I want to write and only write and just write the books that I want to write versus, you know, somebody that learns that you have to kind of make some sacrifices in the beginning of your career until you become a Stephen King or you become a Margaret Weiss or you become a, yeah, please, right? Like even Tolkien was a professor,
Yeah, no, it's like you have to work jobs to work this job for sure.
Yeah. And R.R.
Especially
Martin, believe it or not, actually was a fantasy writer when he came. He's sci-fi. And he did other things like worked on television shows and he helped with scripts.
Oh yeah, no, I mean,
you
I
know?
think if anybody dives into this career with the fantasy of becoming instantly rich from one book, you're in for a rude awakening.
What do you mean? What do you mean? I'm not going to make millions? Come on.
Oh my gosh, no, it's a great career though. I mean, I definitely,
Yeah.
encourage anyone to go into the arts if it's fulfilling for you, but it's tough.
100%. And the other thing that's really valuable if you're a writer and you're listening to the show is, you're allowed to do work as a writer for other people. If you have a very specific skill as a writer, if you're good at copy, you can work and do side work doing social media posts or helping with a website copy or getting involved with marketers as a consultant. If you're amazing at editing and it's something you're passionate about, you can edit other people. Like you don't have to make money solely on the thing you created. You can get involved with the community, which would only elevate you and your name and get a reputation going around. And that's one of the secrets to success is community building. Like you were saying earlier, social media and being able to be involved with TikTok. And, you have a YouTube channel, which I recommend whoever's watching or listening, subscribe to his YouTube channel. All his information will be in the description below. And how has building community really influenced your career and writing process?
Honestly, I feel like I don't mean this as a negative thing, but this is my experience, and I've seen other people sort of struggle with this, is that a lot of people, when they first start out, they sort of have tunnel vision into their immediate circle of friends or family, and they become bummed out when they're not massively supported by people who aren't in love with books the way that they are.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that your friends and your family shouldn't love what you do and support you, but if they're not passionate about reading, they're probably not going to read and review your book. So for me, I went through that and I had to realize that I had to sort of break out of my social anxieties and the, my kind of apprehensions of going out into the bookish community and meeting people. But when I did, I met people in writing groups that supported me and did beta reading. And it helped me grow so much. So that was a really positive experience for me. As far as like social media goes, I just think across the board, it's tough for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the fact that everyone wants to be seen and feel special, there's just a lot going on. But for me, I think the two platforms I like the most are Instagram and TikTok.
Now, what do you get out of TikTok that makes you feel that it's worth putting your time in?
Engagement, definitely engagement. You get to meet cool people, supportive people, and also I just love to support fellow authors. I've bought in books, I've reviewed books for people on TikTok, so that's fun. And just during the write or during my day when I'm writing, I've like jumped into people's lives and just kind of chit chatted, and it kind of makes you feel a little less alone
Yeah.
during the process of writing, which is cool. And you get to meet cool people like the right mindset,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
and it opens up different opportunities like podcasts and just new friendships. So I think that's something that's awesome.
Yeah, the thing about TikTok that really is nice is that the community, for anyone who's like nervous to get on there, you'll feel like you're being judged. The community is quite embracing, especially for newbies, baby authors. It's the thing is, the more people we have writing in our industry, the stronger the industry comes. So, we don't look at each other as competition. And that's an important factor for writers. For example, Joseph's writing an animated inspired book that follows different mythoses from Greek to, as you were saying earlier. But I'm writing fantasy that's old school, like knights and dragons, It takes place on another planet, but it's still, whatever. There's only 7 stories you can tell in the world, but the way we represent those stories is through our perspectives. So there can't be a challenge, because there's no way Joseph lived the life I lived, as I have not lived the life Joseph has lived. And if you're a new writer and you're listening to this episode, it's good to get around other writers to see that you're not alone. Your journey, as specific as it is to you, is very common for others. Joseph said earlier, right? You were saying that you went to a vanity publisher and you had to learn the hard way.
Oh yeah.
You're not the first. You're definitely not going to be the last to do that. But for you having the courage to say that you went through that and got scammed is beautiful, because you're helping the next generation of interested authors. And I commend you for that kind of kindness and compassion.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess one thought I have on that is, for your writing journey, have patience. Have patience with yourself as far as just learning and growing within your craft. But also, don't rush just to hit the publish button. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you definitely want to check those boxes and make sure that you're really ready. Not to say anything's ever going to be perfect, but you want to publish something you're proud of. For sure.
What gave you that sense of completion when you wrote your first book and said, you know what, I'm ready to hit that publish button?
I did a lot of research, like I said, into sort of improving my understanding of craft, whether it was just sentence structure, show versus tell.
What's that? No.
Yeah, I had a bad habit of info dumping certain things like character description. So I just learned to sort of interweave, like, describing scenes and characters through kind of the narrative and dialogue. And I just felt more comfortable as far as my ability to tell a story. So that was cool. I connected with a writing group and I met people who gave me feedback. So that was kind of cool. Like I said, honestly, those were moments I probably felt like I grew the most, having perspectives or outside perspectives in my work, because oftentimes we're so close to what we're doing that we don't see where we need to grow or where we need to improve.
Yeah, and they weren't demanding change like you were suggesting a publisher would do. You were actually getting feedback and criticism that was helping you to reevaluate what you were writing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, beta readers are great, especially if you have people you trust and are insightful and honest without being abusive.
Yeah.
And no, it's like, the beta readers are like, hey, the pacing, this is what I thought of these characters. And it's some valuable insight, and I'm thankful for anyone who gives me that time to read my work and to give me that feedback.
Now,
And obviously, don't change things because one person says something.
Oh yeah. There's a rule. It's basically you want like a 33% change rate. Like if the majority of the people are pointing something out, you might want to change it. But if 33% of the people are saying, you might want to look into it. It might be something to explore, but you don't necessarily have to change it. And remember, it's your story anyway. However, if more than one person is noticing something, it might be you.
if you recruit 10 people and 8 people are confused about something, you should probably look at it.
No, this makes sense to me. You gotta get to the third book to understand this moment.
Yes, I've heard that before.
Now, I actually want to point something out about Show Don't Tell that you mentioned it. So, what are your thoughts? I'll bring up an example, and then I want to hear your thoughts on the topic. But back in the day, and I'm going to use a movie and television show as an example. It's still storytelling. In Star Wars, A New Hope, the episode 4. Darth Vader's entrance is that he's wearing all black. He walks into basically an all white background. People are dying around him, and there's ominous music, and the audience knows this person's not to be messed with or trifled with. This is the bad guy. Versus like pretty common writing nowadays when it comes to television and movies, where, like you were saying, exposition dumps. Those where it's like, I need you to know that this guy or this person is very bad, very evil.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on there's like, not saying George Lucas is the next Shakespeare, but there's a way to write where you don't always have to explain to your audience what's going on. Like, there's a certain level of competence from your viewing audience, even though people say you should dumb down your work. You shouldn't dumb down your work, but you should write for audiences to understand, but that doesn't mean you have to lay it out on the page verbatim for them to go, oh, okay, so there's a sword, I have to get the sword, this is like, you don't always have to do that. What are your thoughts on the different styles of writings from back in the day where it was almost sort of implied exposition versus how it's so thrown onto the audience nowadays in every scene almost?
Well, I mean, I guess like reader or viewer expectations do evolve over time. And I think in some ways, like, depending on what you're watching, storytelling does seem to be kind of dumbed down. I don't know. Maybe they think that if they just simplify it more, it's easier for the viewer or the reader. But I don't know. I like to think that I give my readers some credit and don't underestimate their intelligence. Sorry, my dog is kind of needing
Yeah.
attention right now. Um, but it's like as far as like show don't tell. Like, I mean, I kind of had to study that. And sorry, 1 second.
Yeah,
My
good.
dog.
We got the dogs playing around. He's going to go into show, don't tell. And just so you understand, showing is through the experience of the characters, telling is the actual perspective of the author or the narrator. The narrator allows you to understand what is going on at a play by play rate. And show versus tell. Show is more of watching the process develop for the characters. All right. Back to
Sorry
Joseph.
about that.
No,
I
no,
have a
it's all right.
chihuahua and she's
Go
very
ahead,
neat.
do your story. Your show versus tell.
Alrighty. So, I guess, like I said, like I tried to like study that more, but at the same time, it's like you need a balance. I mean, for me, like I got into a place where I was like, okay, well, I want to show these like intense moments of like fear or whatever emotions my character was feeling. But then I also got into a place where I was like scared to like put in exposition because I
Oh,
was like, this is just telling, and it's like, no, you need this blend of both.
yeah.
So I think I've kind of got that down more so now, but yeah, when you hear advice on show versus tell, I think a lot of people tend to take it to like one extreme or the other.
Yeah, or excuse the pun, literally. And it's like, there's another phrase out there that I've heard where it's show sometimes tell, right? So it's not show don't tell, it's show sometimes tell.
Right.
And one of the things I think it's a terminology that I feel I created just to break down the process a little bit more. So exposition is a straight general terminology, but I like to call it story exposition versus character exposition. And the big difference is story exposition is the stuff that is just laid out flat for you.
Yeah.
We need to get A to have B happen, and we have this much time. Character exposition is learning and discovering the story through their experiences, and that has always helped me because sometimes we need to know what the urgency is, by knowing there's a bomb, there's 30 minutes left. That's story exposition. That's straight exposition. We found the bomb. I don't know how to, disarm it. It says this 30 seconds or whatever, 10 minutes left. That you need to create the tension that you can now show through the story as characters deal. And Alfred Hitchcock was a master of that. He would show the audience the bomb under the table, but the characters didn't know about the bomb. And
Yeah.
then you got to see the tension build through that. So yeah, I agree with you very very much, Joseph. But with that said,
Yeah.
um,
Sorry.
now everybody has a writing process when it comes to getting their books out there. Do you have I shouldn't say do you. Let's explore your process a little bit. Has your process evolved over the 3 books, and what is it that you really love about your process that helps you get your books out now?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved in some ways. I think when you first dive into writing a book, it's just like this experiment, and you just kind of start typing, and you kind of figure it out as you as you go. With the first book, I was super meticulous, and I had all these like Word documents. I was like folder 1, draft 1, and each scene had its own thing, and I had just like all laid out. But now I just open one Word doc and I just type in the draft, and I have like hyperlinks that go to the chapters. But my favorite part of the process, especially starting out, is just like getting into like geek mode and like researching things,
Yeah.
mythologies, gods, and all that geeky goodness. And I'll create my characters. And I know some people, depending on who you ask about world building, some people will say that they spent years world building.
Yeah.
Some people not so much. For me, I just sort of create characters and then I world build around the characters and kind of what they need and where they need to go. I think when you sort of like research, if you're doing retellings or mythology, a lot of it's sort of just easy to do. So I guess that's my world building method, which I'm not sure if it's all that complicated, but
Well, you're saying Thor is always going to be Thor, so
right,
if I mention Thor, there's already a
right. So
world
Asgard,
understanding.
Avalon. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I try and implement original concepts, but for me, for the most part, I'm not gonna like, create, a market system. I'm not gonna create like, hey, this is how the castle has its sewage system. It's like nobody cares. you know,
can you
I,
tell me the
I
history of these trees, please?
right. No, I recently read an intro of a book where it was just this huge info dump in the beginning, and
Oh
they
yeah.
sort of just sat and like described everything like in like the kingdom. And I was like, why not just describe these things as the character goes there?
You
So
bring up a great point, and when I deal with when I work with clients, and because I actually do this, I'm a story consultant and narrative developer consultant, so I'll help people get their stories straight. Um, One of the big things is that what you're talking about is they're so excited about showing their world and all the work they put into developing the world is that they almost make the book more about the history of, and it just so happens there's a story going on. And
yeah,
I say exactly what you say, which is, let your characters experience the world, and as they experience the world, that will be the world building for your reader. We don't need to know about three cities away unless three cities away is going to help influence us and the story ahead.
yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure.
Now, would you safely say you're more of a pantser now than you were an outliner when you first started, or is there like a mixture of both?
Honestly, I'm definitely not just a pantser. I think that word's funny, by the way.
How about Gardner?
No, I like to outline things. I like to outline and I like to plan. I usually like open a Word doc and I'll be like, okay, well, chapter one, what do I want to happen in chapter one? And I just sort of go scene by scene and I'll make kind of like plot points and it kind of helps me like space out through different, the different acts, I guess. So some people be like, a 3 act structure, 4 act structure, etc.
Yeah.
So I think that helps me to plan out significant things for the story, but also I write chronologically, so it gets me really like amped and excited. So if I have scenes that I really want to write, planning things out sort of like fuels me to get to those points. But with that said, I'm also open to have kind of wiggle room or just sort of like go off the path if an idea evolves. So I mean, I like to not be as strict as okay, I only have to do these things, but I like to have them planned out. So when I sit down, I'm like, okay, well, this is what I need to do.
You'll allow yourself to discover the story as you outline it, and if something changes or feels good, you'll explore it, which is healthy writing, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, for authors out there, you're not beholden to the story you created. You're a writer. You're allowed to change things up. You're allowed to see where it could go. Sometimes when I first started writing, I would run into those, well, this is how I kind of wrote it out. Like, I have to keep it, and that's the
yeah,
story. But in reality, it's like, no, you're allowed to say, well, what would happen if this happens, and just kind of like work it out, brainstorm it, maybe bullet point, see where it goes. Because your story could only get better if you challenge what you have. There comes a certain point for any writer where they just keep writing things just because they have to happen. They're like, well, I need to get them to meet this person, so they meet them. I need them to, all right, after they meet this person, I need them to go here, so they go there. And
yeah,
and you have to say to yourself, well, how do I challenge that? How do I make the story grow? Why can't they have trouble getting to the person they need to meet? Or why can't the person they need to meet end up getting taken? Or why can't the person they end up meeting die? Why can't, like, just because I need them to meet this person, why can't I challenge that and see how I can disrupt the story to create story and allow characters to earn those situations? You
Oh
know,
yeah.
now speaking about that, when you tackle your stories, do you find your well how do you work with those moments when you find yourself uh almost realizing you have characters that you don't need in this story, but you're emotionally connected to them? What is your process to kind of either get them, wiggle them in, or go, you know what, I have to accept my defeat and take this character out?
You know, honestly, I don't think I've ever had to take a character out of a story, but I have like changed up a character's role in a story, and that was in my second book. But I don't want to say anything because spoilers. But no, I think it's important to be able to sort of kill your darlings and to realize what ultimately fits the story, or helps the narrative, whether it's the overall plot or whether it's the evolution of your character. I think a lot of people tend to think that X, Y, and Z, even within like, we were talking about world building is important, but if it's only fluff and it doesn't really serve to evolve a character or to further the plot, you don't really need it. So yeah, I mean, I guess I've learned to like to cut parts of chapters or concepts that I came up with based on the fact it's like, okay, well, does this really serve a purpose? Yes or no?
Is that process becoming easier as you develop your writing skill, or do you still find yourself trying to salvage these babies, these these diamonds in the rough?
Well, I think that's like one advantage for me as far as the way that I outline is because since I try and plan things out, I mean, obviously with some creative flexibility, I don't really come across that very often, to be honest.
Well, that's good, and that's the thing is sometimes you have to trust yourself as a writer, and as you develop as a writer, you're always going to acknowledge what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Plus, it's your story style, and your voice is being explored, and you know what you like and you know what you don't like. However, one of the advantages of, and I love that you said it earlier, is you got to hire an editor, you got to hire somebody to look at it. And we were saying in another episode, which I think is important to reiterate, it's like when we write a book as authors, we're emotionally connected to it. And we've done thousands of hours of research and study to develop this world, this book. We don't miss confusing moments because it makes sense to us. Like the comment I said earlier, it's like, well, you got to understand this for book 3. We get it. But
Yeah.
at the same time, when a new eye hits it, like a new editor, they're going to see things you can't see. And when you get to those moments, it's about taking that step back. Now, you said you hired an editor. What kind of moments did you find that influenced that for you, where they saw things you didn't see, and how did you work it out?
I think the developmental edit is probably like one of the more crucial moments where you have someone who looks at the overall like plot of your book and then they kind of like take and dissect the character arcs. And I did get feedback on a couple of mine where they were like, okay, well, you might want to like more further or more clarify. I sound like such an intelligent person. You might want to put more clarity as far as like this character's motives and maybe add a little bit to like X, Y, and Z, like these scenes, so then it makes more sense. And that was incredibly helpful. I think one of the most important parts, especially if you're getting feedback, is just to kind of be humbled and to know that either way, like the point is to tell the best story and to, publish the best product possible. So as far as working with editors, I just took what they kind of pointed out and I guess treated it like it was a learning tool versus like it challenging me and my ego and
Which is good. As a writer, we have to learn that we're developing as writers, and we can only get better when we have our works challenged and our viewpoints challenged. Uh, you know, Even the greatest football player in high school is not going to be the greatest football player in college. They need to relearn because it's a new field. Just like from college level to NFL, there's a learning curve, right?
oh
So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's the same thing with writers. When we write our first book versus say our 10th book, or once what we know before we're published versus what we know after we're published versus what we know when we are traditionally published. They're all different learning curves. So it's good that you give that advice, and I hope people hear that with a sense of compassion, that it's okay to sit back and listen while you're getting this critique to your work, because it'll only benefit you to listen, you know,
Definitely.
and hear it out. Um, when you work with other writers, you know, especially like in like a writing circles, and like, you know, like you were saying, you have community of writers. What do you love about the process of, you know, hearing and learning about other people's stories and getting a chance to kind of dig into what they're doing and give them compassionate critique? What is it you love about that?
I think it's great to, first of all, know that this is an incredibly challenging and like oversaturated industry. So there's so many challenges. I think that through my experience, kind of things that I've gone through and struggled with, I've seen people who are like, I'm having trouble with social media. I can't find, beta readers, just different things that people struggle with. And just to know that you're not alone, but to also find people that are like minded. Like I love to support fellow authors as far as like buying and reviewing their books, because I know getting reviews is like pulling teeth.
Yeah, yeah,
um, sorry. Well,
it's okay.
um, and it's just cool to just have moments where maybe it's not so much just talking shop, but just connecting with people and laughing and having a good time and making friends, genuine connections. Because in my experience, as far as like social media goes, I think a lot of people tend to just jump onto promotion groups and things like that and just drop their links, but there isn't really any connection or community there. So when you find kind of like your village, your people who kind of get you and support you and cheer you on, and it's just like just this mutual admiration and um I don't know, just this vibe of like I get you and I have your back. I think it's cool.
That's such a great point, especially when you stated that, you know, the dropping the links and running. You know, those promotions. There's no emotional connection uh,
No.
to that journey. It's sort of like, hey, I'm a writer. That's all I care about. You know, here's my stuff. You should buy my stuff because it's awesome.
Copy and paste.
Copy and paste, copy and paste. Right? You know, like I got 15 minutes. You know,
Right, right.
but like the way I see you interact on TikTok, you're very inclusive. You're very you have a great communication with more than one TikToker, and also, you know, your videos are there to ultimately have an opinion, a perspective, and give some advice and guidance to other authors. And that's something that's really beautiful about social media. When you find, like you said, your village, is that you go, okay, this is where we're going to explore. Now, you have 3 books published, self-published, and by the way, self-publishing is not a negative for anyone who's not getting the traditional publishing out there. It's okay to self-publish. It's a business. You are the publisher, and you can incorporate your publishing company, and you know you're handling the publishing. But with that said, um, I think I threw myself all the way. Oh, so self-publishing. You've done 3 books. How has TikTok really helped you with getting those reviews, and also uh, allowing the community to get more involved in your books as they develop?
Well, one thing I like about TikTok is it's a very visual medium. So I mean, you can like post like different templates. You can post videos. You can use your own voice. You can use the generated voices. So I think it's a really creative platform. And honestly, depending on what types of books you write, you really should consider like what platforms you put the most energy into. Like Facebook, for instance. Like what I write, I don't think there's like a huge audience for what I write on Facebook, but I've had a lot more luck with like Instagram and TikTok.
You don't think mothers, fathers, and grandparents are your audience?
Probably not, unless they're like geeky and they love anime and all that
They're,
stuff. But
they're
but
dressed
yeah,
like
it's
steampunk.
really important to be mindful of like kind of where you put your energy and your focus. Honestly, I've kind of talked about this before, where it's incredibly hard to get engagement on different platforms. But for me, TikTok has been fantastic. Probably the best experience I've had, where I've met some friends. I've kind of overcome some of my anxiety about posting things, just because it's like, how
Great.
can you feel anxious when you're sitting and like limp syncing, like crazy things, and just like laughing and having such a good time with it?
Yeah.
So I think that it's just been a really fun, creative way to express myself and connect with people. And then when people kind of get a feel for your personality, because like first and foremost, like you want a genuine connection with people and you want to be open, about like kind of like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I like, and just kind of having fun with it. Versus where a lot of people are like, buy my book, buy my book, buy my
Oh,
book.
yeah.
And that just doesn't go over very well. So I feel if you come across as a genuine person, you're going to have people that are like, hey, what are you writing? What are you doing? And that sparks conversation and support. So I guess that's my experience thus far on TikTok.
Well, to dive a little deeper into that, what is it you're looking for in people when it comes to building your village? Inviting people in, or even journeying to villages. What is it you look for? Traits and just things about people.
I just like people who have like a positive vibe to them, people who love books, who are supportive. I love to, like I said, I love to buy people's books and support them. I have no expectations just because I buy someone's book. I'm not expecting anything, but I just like people that are cool, no drama, just nice people.
Now, because you are so involved in the community, and as you stated, you purchase books and stuff like that from indie authors, and again, indie authors is not a derogatory term. I think we should embrace that because they are going to change the publishing industry, especially as we unite and get stronger. Now, what for authors listening, okay? And what we're about to say and what I'm about to ask is not to put anyone down or attack you. This is a learning exercise for people. And since Joseph, you're an author, you have 3 books, you've done the process of self-publishing, and you've actually purchased books from probably baby authors, first-time writers, things like that.
Mhm.
What is something that you consistently see in new authors that is detrimental to their stories, and how can they adjust what they are doing to get the most out of it?
Well, I can only speak for myself, and I mean, I guess I kind of see some of these things with some people where they don't really believe they have to study craft. And I think it's important to study craft as far as just, hey, learning show versus tell, learning how to structure your book, how to layer your characters, and just kind of pull people into an engaging story. Something else I've noticed is with self publishing. I mean, if we're only speaking self publishing, I think a lot of people, as I mentioned before, are very impatient. So, I mean, have patience with yourself and with the process of publishing. I think and I do understand that financially for self-published authors, like affording like a really good cover or editing is daunting, because that's what made me sort of fall into like the whole vanity press thing. Was I looked at the price tags on things and I was like, holy crud, you know what I mean? But honestly, you're better off saving for things and investing in those things and taking your time versus publishing a product that doesn't look professional and nobody's going to buy. So yeah, just impatience, not like really understanding craft, not thinking that you have to read or understand reader expectations or tropes within your genres.
All right, you bring up another. That's some great advice, especially for authors that haven't really delve into a long career, or even in the beginning of their career. Tropes. I like that you brought tropes up. What are some tropes you believe should just be? Let's just throw these out.
Um, hmm. I don't really particularly care for tropes where it's like there's anything problematic where it's like, oh, I've been kidnapped and I'm abused, but I'm falling in love with this person, or just I don't anything that's crazy and problematic.
So basically, Stockholm syndrome,
Right.
not your cup of tea.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed Game of Thrones, and so
Okay.
for Game of Thrones, take that for instance, where essentially Daenerys is sold
Mm.
and problematic things happen. And then they sell it like it's this like epic romance. It's like, no, this is so problematic. It's
What are you
like,
talking? Rape isn't love,
right. But then she's like, oh, you're the moon of my stars, and they have all this type of stuff going on. It's like, dude, like,
right?
am I the
Right.
only one who remembers how this started?
To be fair, though, to be fair, she does kill him inadvertently, and I think that's what she wanted. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
Spoiler alert. Because she's the one who says because he gets infected,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Don't let the witch near me." And then she's like, "No, no, she could save your life, even though she's already done some crazy things." and then the witch poisons him, and then he dies,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, okay.
Well, I think she was just kind of desperate, but yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I'm just making a joke, like, I wonder if there was something a little deeper in there. Where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, he died. Okay, I own. Let me get out of here.
All right, now,
Uh,
I was talking to one author once where I was in a writing group, and he was writing romance, and it started out with somebody beating somebody up, and I was like, no, no. This is probably not the best way to start all these fluffy feels. Is yeah, you beat me up. I love you. No.
yeah, I've heard a punch drunk glove, but this is ridiculous. uh,
Right. No, but I
uh,
know there are problematic ones, but I guess it
what
is what it
are
is.
the things that people could do to fix that particular trope?
I don't know. I guess just be more mindful that certain topics shouldn't be so lightly handled for entertainment, I guess.
Like, it shouldn't be used as sort of like, you know, obviously we're going to always have stories where somebody dies and it fuels them to avenge the death of a loved one. We get that. But are you saying that, for example, the Stockholm syndrome trope, basically, is there a difference? And I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm just trying to think through philosophically. You're basically saying, like, there's a difference between using the trope for glorified storytelling versus, is there really a story there that needs to be told? Would you say that's basically what you're saying? Is there should be substance if you're going to go with something so dark and no pun intended, touchy of a situation? um there should be substance to the story, and not just Stockholm syndrome is the story.
Well, I don't think that it should I don't think that it should just be glazed over. Like if you
Yeah.
start with a character who's a slave and they're sold and they're abused, I don't think that should be just only romanticized. I think within the story you should recognize that that behavior is problematic instead of just being like, okay, well, let's embroider "You are the moon and my stars" on a pillow. It was very problematic, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
problematic stuff within Game of Thrones. I mean, I do like the series, but I'll definitely admit there's a lot of problematic stuff in it.
You don't think it's okay that uncles and
Oh my
underage
god.
nieces
Oh gosh.
explore the heart?
Oh gosh.
um, Now, Spartacus was a show that was pretty. Ex- there was a few things in that show, that were, you
Well,
shouldn't watch it if you're a child. But uh,
well, no.
what?
I've got that series on DVD, and I'll say that
Great series.
it's very adult oriented for sure.
Definitely. It's
But at
Cinemax.
the same time, I don't think that any of the problematic stuff they don't ever glaze over it as like this is just only romance.
Yeah.
Like these characters experience lasting trauma based on these problematic things, and it's not just this so easily dismissed.
That's what I was gonna bring up. Like, all the insanity that goes on through, basically the misuse of human beings through slavery, through sexual assault, through all these things, uh, terrible, terrible things. It leads to the rebellion. It leads to them fighting back. It leads to them pushing on the Romans. So it's not like, well, this is our way of life. No, it's their way of life upstairs, but the downstairs people are being emotionally influenced by it in a way that fuels their pushback. And I think, in a sense, as graphic as that show is, I feel like that almost hits all the buttons that you would prefer to be pushed when it comes to those sensitive topics. So
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, when you take Game of Thrones for instance, like with the whole Khaleesi, Aquaman, I can't remember his name right now, Jason Momoa.
Jason,
But
I did see Aquaman in Game of Thrones. I'll be honest.
um, uh, Khal Drogo, that was his name. Sorry,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I should know that. I've seen the series so many times, but
Because I think Khaleesi's is the old guy, right? Her
oh no,
bodyguard.
Daenerys is her name, but Khaleesi is one of the titles that she
Oh, I
has.
see. Okay,
We
okay,
get
okay.
Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains,
Oh,
so on, so on, so on, so on.
she had a page of
Right,
titles. It was ridiculous.
right. No, I love the character though, but essentially what they do is they're like, okay, well, you're a slave and you're sold, and he wants some action, so he's gonna take it. And then in the next episode, we're gonna have a slave tell you that you should just hop on top and all's forgiven. That's like what? But whereas Spartacus, where there were people that were wrong, they were like vengeance.
Yeah, yeah. They're like, let's we gotta kill some people. We gotta,
Yeah.
or like when oh, I forget his name, but he's such an interesting character. He's like the undefeated gladiator that ends up getting hurt by Spartacus. Uh,
Mm.
he's like the main champion there when Spartacus arrives. But anyway, he ends up getting Xena, the warrior princess, pregnant.
Oh yeah, Crixus.
Yeah, Crixus, and you know she's like, yes,
Xena.
thank
I got
you.
Xena the warrior princess naked.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Well, that's who she.
That
is.
was weird because I saw Xena, but I was like, she's naked in this.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm a little confused. Like,
Yeah.
is this a Saturday morning Hercules and the New Avengers? But what's interesting is he kills. Well, spoiler alert again. People had to have seen it by now. He stabs her through the stomach, presumably killing her, but she lives for the next season. But killing the baby. And though killing the baby is a pretty dark thing, he tries to kill her and the baby to end that basically cycle, that connection he had with her raping him.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't consensual, like he was a slave.
At all. So it's pretty interesting how they approach those subjects, and how I think that's what made it so interesting, is that they didn't hold back. They were like, this is what it is. This is what happens. It's not an easy life. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And they showed it. Whereas Game of Thrones, it's sort of like a story tool. Like, oh, well, we need her to get pushed over the bed and taken advantage of in a horrible way, but we also need them to love each other. Like they were just hitting beats.
Right, it's just weird. Yeah, like later in the series where Sansa's all like, "This is great that happened to me because now I am who I am." It's like,
yeah, when the bastard kid, whatever.
She's
like, he hits me.
I could rant about the way that series ended forever. It was terrible. But.
There's one moment in that show where I was like, I don't care what happens in the show anymore, because I just don't believe these people. And it's when, and again, spoiler, when the church basically takes the queen and throws her in a cell, and takes the princess and throws her in the cell, and then takes the prince and throws him in a cell. First of all, the prince is a knight, and he never ever fights back. Second of all, the queen never fights back, and she's a badass. Like, she doesn't take crap from anybody. She never even stands up. She accepts that she gets whipped and thrown. Like, I was just like, I would rather be killed fighting to get out of there,
Right,
and to be put into that situation of derogatory, like, their essence was taken from them.
yeah.
And it's like, first of all, how's the queen, this powerful figure, this character that manipulates the situation, this character that finds resolve to overcome, be okay with being in a cell?
Well, I just don't think she had a choice. But for me, like, I totally get where you're coming from. But something I liked was the fact that for a while, like, Cersei, she was manipulating these situations, and she put this guy in this place of power, thinking that she was untouchable, and she wasn't. So for me, I was like, she got her comeuppance.
I am on board with that. I understand.
So I sort of enjoyed that moment.
Yeah, I get the story, but what I'm saying is, a character like even the prince, who's a knight, like, why didn't he fight? Why didn't he? Like, I know I would have, if I had that kind of like upbringing, and that, like, I'm not gonna. There's no way I wouldn't be like, hey, I want the royal guard to come and save me.
Yeah.
Like, they were just like, oh, it's the church, we can't do anything. I'm moving.
Right. Well,
Like,
I guess if it like reflects like, medieval Europe, I mean, the church was pretty much was like the law, and like,
again, I completely understand. I know why, and I know she basically, when I talk about challenging the situation, she did something, and that something was challenged and put her in a position where she got the consequence of it.
right.
I'm just saying,
you didn't get the struggle.
yeah,
That
but she sat down and took it, and
Yeah.
didn't even like she wasn't trying to get people to visit. She wasn't trying to get message out. She wasn't trying like, you know, um I understand the king got manipulated, so like her son didn't do anything. I'm just
Yeah.
like in my head, I'm trying to understand like why did everything she represent get diminished to I'll just accept this punishment? Like I understand why she was punished. I get how she ended up there, but there was
Yeah.
no pushback on her, and I thought that was poor writing. Uh,
No, for sure. I hear what you're saying.
from a larger. But anyway, all right. So we got to the point where we get to the last question. You had picked two questions, and I'm going to ask the second question. So here goes. Are you ready? All right. The
I'll do my
publishing
best.
industry generates around 26 billion in revenue in the United States every year. Even though that number has been flat for the past 4 years due to the pandemic, the industry has been experiencing some sizable shifts. For example, the emergence of ebooks, audiobooks, and digital technology. In a fast paced world of people on the go, how do you feel the potential of audiences moving toward audiobooks over experiencing the physical product in their hands will influence the publishing industry for authors?
Honestly, I think this I mean, you could look at this as far as even like audiobooks versus, I mean, not audiobooks, but ebooks versus like paperbacks. And a lot of people, when ebooks were becoming popular, were sort of like asking the same question, like, how is this going to affect printing? Honestly, I think that there's potential in all of it because based on people's preferences or even just disabilities, I mean, you may prefer one or the other. So I don't know. I don't have any insight as far as like predicting what's going to happen, but I don't think that audiobooks are going to cancel anything else out, just like ebooks didn't cancel out print books.
Yeah, but as far as like how it influences authors, there is this the reason this question exists is there was a discussion, and which is still going on to today, is that would it almost be more beneficial to focus on creating a book for audio than it is to create a book for publishing the physical copy? Like, should they make it more dramatic audio approaches, like getting actors to play different characters, putting sound? There is a difference between like an audiobook reading where they have like whoever the main protagonist is, like if it's a guy or a girl, the narrator is a guy or a girl, and they sort of read through it, and it's just a straight read. Whereas like making a dramatic reading of a book, if you've ever experienced them, they're pretty awesome. Like they have sound effects and they have a
Oh,
um, so that's what I'm asking is like, what are your thoughts on the fact that audiobooks are becoming such a sought after platform? uh, will that influence authors to maybe write for dramatic readings through audio, or will they continue to focus on making a strong physical book?
honestly, I mean, from my experience as far as talking to people who commission audiobooks, is they just write a book they're passionate about and then they go on to, I think it's called ACX.
Yep.
And you have the option whether you want to pay somebody upfront or whether you want to split royalties with somebody and not pay anything right away. But I don't know. I mean, for me, I don't think it's going to influence the way people write books. I mean, as long as you're writing something you're passionate about and you're writing something that engages readers, I think it's just your job to sort of hire the best fit as far as like a voice actor for what you're doing.
Okay. Excellent. Now, Joseph, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day. I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
For anyone listening and not watching the YouTube, how can they find you to check you out?
So my official website is authorjosephharkreader.com. And just my social medias tend to match that, authorjosephharkreader.com, whether it's Instagram or here on, or well, I guess it's probably a TikTok, but on TikTok.
And anyone listening, Hark Reader is HARKREADER. Again, that's two words, Hark and the word reader as one. You can find them also in the description of the YouTube video if you'd like to come back and check that out. Is there anything you want to say to the audience? Give them like a nice farewell advice or motivational hey.
Yes, buy my book. Kidding. No, just
Motivate them to buy your book.
if you love writing, if you're looking to publish, just like I've said, be patient with the process and with yourself, and just enjoy what you do. Um,
I
I
love
guess
it.
that's my advice to writers.
Wonderful. And again, Joseph Harkreader, thank you so very much for being on the show. To everyone listening, you know, check out the podcast. You get a chance to hear other authors, their journey, their writing process, a little insight to the industry. And, for anyone out there, you got to remember to always be developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.